I think we should take a second and talk about color spaces and color modes here inside Photoshop. I've got my color palette open here on the right hand side. You may want to go up to the window menu and head down to color yourself if you want to follow along here. Now, let's get started here by talking about RGB. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. This is an additive color space that we can work with here inside Photoshop. RGB is commonly used in web design. As a matter of fact, any screens, including television screens and computer monitors, uses red, green, and blue in it. And it's an additive color space because as I drag these sliders, I'm actually increasing the amount of each color and thus mixing a new color that I can see showing up here inside the color palette. Now, a great way that I've heard this explained, and I'll share it here with you, is imagine you're standing in front of three massive spotlights. One is a red spotlight, one is a green spotlight, and one is a blue spotlight. So if I crank the blue spotlight all the way up while the red and the green spotlights are off, you get pure blue. If I crank up the blue and I also crank up the red, I'm going to get this pink magenta-ish color here. And then if I crank up the green spotlight as well, so all three spotlights are at full intensity, what I wind up getting is pure white. Now these sliders here inside the RGB color space are on a scale from 0 to 255, giving us 256 levels for each of our colors. Of course, if you were standing in front of three massive spotlights and all three were off, all three were at their lowest intensity, you would see pure black. Okay, so there's a look at RGB. Let's take a quick look at one of our other common color spaces, Cmyk. So up in the top corner of the color panel, I'm going to open up the panel menu and switch to Cmyk. The Cmyk color space is most commonly used in the print industry. These are also referred to as our process colors. This is a subtractive color space. So I'll start things off here by pulling all of my sliders all the way down. We have cyan, we have magenta, we have yellow, and we have black. And it's almost the opposite to RGB. If I pull them all the way down, then I get pure white. If I were to crank all four sliders up, I'd get pure black. And rather than going on a scale from 0 to 255, now I'm on a scale from 0 to 100% for all four colors. Now, the way that I think about this, rather than spotlights, is I imagine an artist, a traditional artist, mixing paint pigments on his paint palette. So imagine if he threw in, let's say, a quarter of cyan and half magenta. It's almost like a recipe, right? And let's say a quarter of yellow, he winds up with something like this. Or if he increases the amount of yellow and he increases the amount of magenta, he would wind up with this sort of salmon-y looking color there. So that's how the Cmyk color space works. Now, how does this apply to what we're actually working on inside Photoshop? Well, I'm going to double click on my gray background here, and I'm going to go inside my Chapter 8 folder, and I'm looking for oldbarnwindows.jpg. I'll grab that guy, open him up. There he is there, and up on the image's title bar, I can see that I have an RGB image. As a matter of fact, I could go to the image menu, down to mode, and sure enough, there it is, RGB. Now, what I could do is I could switch the color space of this image. In other words, the way that the color is being represented inside this image. Simply by coming in here, image mode, and I could switch over to Cmyk if I wanted to. And I'm going to get a warning here. I'm about to convert my image to Cmyk. I'll click on OK. That's fine with me. And now up at the top here, I see I have a Cmyk image. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to my window menu and down to channels. The channels palette contains all of the color channels or all of the color information inside my image. As a matter of fact, I can click on my different color channels here inside the channels palette to see what's magenta inside my image, what's yellow inside my image, and so on, or go all the way back to the composite channel right up at the top there, Cmyk. So inside a Cmyk file, I have 4 channels, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If I were to go back to the image menu and down to mode and back to RGB, then the channels palette tells me that I have red, green, and blue channels, and of course the composite channel at the top of the channels palette. So there's a quick look at color spaces inside Photoshop.